Welcome to Adventures in Nutopia, episode, well, bearing in mind the theme, let's call this Series 1 Extra Topping, and a bit of fun before Series 2 comes out in spring. Now, every now and again during the first series, I'd have an idea of someone I really wanted to include, but as the episode they were planned for evolved, the fit just didn't seem quite right. One such was George Egg, who I realised would actually work best on his own. George is one of my favourite comedians. I first saw him in about 1994 doing a silent comedy routine which involved hanging a coat hanger on his ear and then removing the three-piece suit he was wearing and somehow managing to hang it up perfectly without his ear coming off and of course ending up bollock naked on stage to boot. There was something refreshingly vaudevillian about his performance then, and 30 years later his live shows are more delightful, more convivial and skillful than ever. Although yes, his earlobes are quite long these days. In more recent years, George's shows have focused on food. Anarchist Cook, DIY Chef, Movable Feast, these shows are all themed around how to cook a three-course meal in highly unusual places, such as a hotel room or garden sheds, while his snack hacker videos on Instagram and YouTube are full of essential tips for, well, hacking snacks, as you're about to find out. Here's George Egg making me one of the tastiest omelettes I've ever had, and it was all cooked entirely from scraps. I'm in the kitchen of George Egg, comedian and anarchist chef. Is that a good way to introduce you, George?
Yeah, definitely. Well, my first show was called Anarchist Cook. But yeah, I do live shows where I cook in non-culinary environments. So I've been a stand-up comedian for a long time. I would stay in hotel rooms, hungry after a show, full of adrenaline and feeling a bit mischievous. Not wanting to spend money on the overpriced room service. So I started cooking with the irons, the kettle, the trouser press, the hairdryer. That's kind of it in the hotel room.
Well, how do you cook with the iron?
Well, it's a hot plate, so you can use it to press down on things. If you're making like a panini, you can upturn it and suspend it between two rolled up towels. You could put a small pan on there, or what I do is just cook immediately on the surface, butter it generously and make some pancakes.
Are there tools, as they seemed kind of silly, and then actually they proved to be better than what you were doing before?
A hot air gun that you would use for paint stripping. It looks like a hairdryer, but it's much more powerful. Yes, so it's great for toasting things. So in the show I make croutons with it, so I've got a little coal shovel and put the cubes of bread in there, which are oil, and then just use the hot air gun to toast those. But I will keep it in the kitchen, and you'll cook a lasagna and the top's not brown enough, and you can just crisp it up. It's like a portable grill, really.
Could you do a very quick resume of a three-course meal that you've cooked either in a hotel room or on stage or both?
I'll tell you the recipes that I did in the second show, DIY Chef. So I made a breakfast, lunch and dinner. The breakfast was the kippers and eggs poached using a wallpaper stripper. The lunch was pasta made with a paper shredder, boiled in a kettle with a sauce made of Roquefort and the little creams that you get for coffee, and a crumb made of breadcrumbs, hazelnuts, parmesan, garlic, toasted with hair straighteners in a can. And then the dinner was a steak cooked with a blowtorch, cheese and butter on. The butter made with a sander, an orbital sander. I'm going to make you a kimchi omelette that uses all your vegetable scraps, lots of chili in there and ginger and garlic, and it's very hot, very pokey. So that's eggs, guys, in case you were confused. Then all the scraps of herb stalks, basil stalks and parsley, some carrot that was kind of on its way out, starting to go a bit floppy, and then a paste made of masses of ginger, some Scotch bonnets, lots of garlic, and then it goes in a crock, which I've got over there, where I'm making some sauerkraut at the moment as well, and it sits in there and ferments, and you just leave it. So I'm putting a bit of mustard in. I've got 2 eggs in there, a bit of mustard, a little pinch of salt, and some pepper. Okay, so Snack Hacker came about during lockdown. Obviously I couldn't go on stage, so started making these these little videos. The initial premise was I interfered with existing snacks and made them more interesting. Oh God, that's so pokey. Brace yourself. Well, there's one recipe I did for chip shop bubble and squeak. The premise being that whenever you get chips from a chip shop, there's always too many. However small a portion, you either overeat or you have some left. And so it's basically making a bubble and squeak with leftover chip shop chips the next morning. So cabbage, onion, garlic, chopped up chips, just fried in a pan until you get this kind of cakey mush that then starts to compact together and goes crispy on top and on the bottom. And then that with a poached egg on top is just sensational. Onions. Sweetheart cabbage. We don't want too much of this, just a bit. And now a big handful of chips. Fry the onions, cabbage and the chips, just fry, and you mash them with a potato masher. Add a bit of water if it's getting too dry, so they're this mushy. You're not going to stop people eating junk food and eating processed food overnight. But what you can do is the first step, which is to go, okay, you're going to eat that sort of food. How can you be creative with it? How can you be resourceful with it if it's left over, or if you've got some other ingredient that you could add to it to make it more interesting? And then the next step might be that you make your own burger, and then the next step might be that you're doing something without meat. Governments putting taxes on sugar isn't the answer. That's just addressing the symptom. Whereas, the answer is re-educating people, and it's not going to happen overnight. And so actually putting money into teaching kids how to cook from primary school age, and that being as important as maths and English and science.
It tastes like chips if you know it's chips. If you didn't know it was chips, you'd just think it was some really nice potatoey, mushy, but it's got that very slight chip shop taste to it that gives it the interesting sort of flavour profile, whatever.
The whole kind of message that I'm trying to get across is be resourceful, be experimental, bend and break rules, and have fun with it all. Hey, look, your omellette's ready.
George, I'm looking forward to this.
Is it nice?
It's really lovely. It's really lovely. Of course you can.
Let's nick a bit.
There's a real multiplicity of flavours in there.
Yeah, isn't there?
That's a real winner.
As our regular listeners will know, we do like a nice biscuit or snack to keep us going on the road to Nutopia. So who better to ask for a suggestion?
We're going to make the toasted sandwich with the brioche, but we've got to put something inside it. And here's the idea I've had. Tunnock's tea cake.
You've been listening to Adventures in Nutopia with me, David Brammer, special guest, George Egg.
I thought it needed more filling, so we did one with the double. This has got 2 Tunnocks in it. That's much more like it, look at that.